The monsoon had arrived with a vengeance in the quaint village of Amarpur, lashing down with relentless fury for days. The usually vibrant green paddy fields were now a shimmering expanse of gray, and the narrow dirt paths had transformed into treacherous streams of mud. In the heart of this isolated village, nestled amongst ancient banyan trees that seemed to claw at the stormy sky, stood an abandoned well. Locals whispered tales of it, their voices hushed with a mixture of fear and reverence. They called it the Whispering Well, claiming it hummed with secrets and swallowed not just water, but souls. 22-year-old Anya, a budding freelance photographer with an insatiable curiosity and a penchant for the forgotten, found herself drawn to Amarpur. She was on a self-assigned project, documenting the effects of the heavy rains on rural life. But the Whispering Well, perched precariously at the edge of the village, held a different kind of allure, a dark, magnetic pull that resonated with her artistic soul. Ignoring the hushed warnings of the villagers, who crossed themselves and hurried past whenever she mentioned it, Anya ventured towards the well on a particularly gloomy afternoon. The air hung heavy and damp, carrying the scent of wet earth and something else, something faintly metallic and unsettling. The well itself was a crumbling stone structure, its circular opening shrouded in a thick veil of moss and overgrown vines. A single, gnarled tree root snaked down into its depths, disappearing into the inky blackness. As Anya cautiously approached, the wind seemed to pick up, swirling around her in an unnatural vortex. The leaves on the surrounding trees rustled violently, though the downpour had momentarily subsided. And then she heard it, a faint whisper, so soft it could have been the wind playing tricks, but undeniably present. It seemed to emanate from the well itself, a low, guttural murmur that sent a shiver down her spine. Intrigued and a little unnerved, Anya pulled out her professional camera, its weight a familiar comfort in her hands. She circled the well slowly, her lens capturing the decaying stones, the tangled vegetation, and the ominous darkness within. As she peered over the edge, trying to penetrate the gloom, the whispering intensified, morphing into something that sounded disturbingly like a human voice, though the words were indistinguishable, a jumbled mess of sibilant sounds and choked gasps. Suddenly, her foot slipped on the wet moss, and she lurched forward, her camera clattering against the cold stone. For a terrifying moment, she thought she was going to fall in. Heart pounding in her chest, she scrambled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. As she steadied herself, her eyes fell upon something glinting at the bottom of the well, barely visible through the murky water that had collected there. Driven by an irresistible urge, Anya rummaged through her backpack and pulled out a small, high-powered flashlight. Its beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the depths of the well. What she saw made her blood run cold. Partially submerged in the stagnant water, tangled amongst debris and decaying leaves, was a human hand, pale, skeletal, and unmistakably lifeless. A wave of nausea washed over Anya. This was no mere abandoned well, it was a tomb. Her journalistic instincts warred with a primal fear that screamed at her to run, but the sight of that hand, reaching out from the darkness as if pleading for help, rooted her to the spot. She knew she had to call the authorities, but a strange reluctance held her back. The whispering had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that felt even more menacing. It was as if the well itself was holding its breath, waiting. Against her better judgment, Anya decided to investigate further. She had to know who this was, how they had ended up in this forgotten place. Carefully, she edged closer to the well again, her flashlight beam dancing across the grim scene below. She noticed something else now, something partially hidden beneath a layer of mud. A flash of color. Using a long, sturdy stick she found nearby, Anya cautiously poked at the object. It was a piece of fabric, a vibrant crimson silk, torn and faded but still retaining a hint of its original richness. It clung to something else submerged in the water, something larger than a hand. Terror gnawed at her. Was there an entire body down there? And if so, how long had it been there? The villagers' hushed warnings echoed in her mind. Had the Whispering Well claimed another victim? As dusk began to settle, casting long, distorted shadows across the village, Anya finally decided to go back and inform the police. But as she turned to leave, she noticed something new. Scratched into the moss-covered stone lip of the well, barely visible in the fading light, were a series of symbols. They looked ancient, almost otherworldly, and they seemed to writhe and twist before her eyes. A sudden gust of wind swept through the area, extinguishing the last rays of sunlight. The whispering started again, this time louder, closer, as if the well was speaking directly to her. And amidst the unintelligible murmurs, Anya thought she heard a single word, chillingly clear. Anya. Her breath hitched. How could it know her name? Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her. She stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. The well seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and the shadows around it deepened, taking on grotesque, menacing shapes. Ignoring the paralyzing fear, Anya fled, her footsteps pounding on the muddy path. She didn't stop running until she reached the relative safety of her small guest house in the village. But even within the four walls, the chilling whisper seemed to follow her, a constant reminder of the horror she had witnessed. Sleep offered no escape. Anya was plagued by nightmares of reaching hands in swirling darkness, of a well that hummed with malevolent intent. The crimson silk, the skeletal hand, the whispered name. They replayed in her mind like a broken record. The next morning, despite her terror, Anya knew she couldn't ignore what she had found. She contacted the local police station, her voice trembling as she recounted her discovery. Inspector Sharma, a seasoned officer with a weary but kind face, listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grim. Accompanied by a team of officers, Anya returned to the Whispering Well. The scene in daylight was no less disturbing. The well seemed to exude an aura of decay and despair. The police cordoned off the area, and a forensic team began the grim task of retrieving the remains from the well. As the investigation unfolded, the villagers' tales of the Whispering Well took on a new, sinister significance. They spoke of unexplained disappearances over the years, of strange lights seen flickering around the well at night, and of a legend that a vengeful spirit resided within its depths, demanding a sacrifice. Days turned into weeks. The forensic team painstakingly pieced together the remains found in the well. It was indeed a single body, that of a young woman. The crimson silk fragment matched a piece of fabric found clinging to her tattered clothing. But identification proved difficult. The body had been submerged for a long time, and there were no identifying marks or belongings. The police investigation hit a dead end. No missing person reports matched the description, and the villagers claimed to have no knowledge of the deceased. The Whispering Well remained a silent, ominous enigma, guarding its secrets. Anya, however, couldn't let it go. The image of that skeletal hand reaching out from the darkness haunted her waking hours. She felt a strange connection to the unknown victim, a sense of responsibility to uncover her story. Driven by this compulsion, Anya returned to the well, this time alone. The monsoon had finally subsided, and the sun cast long shadows across the landscape. She carefully examined the stone lip again, her fingers tracing the strange symbols she had seen that evening. She photographed them meticulously, hoping to find some clue to their meaning. Back in her guest house, Anya spent hours researching ancient symbols and local folklore. She pored over dusty books and consulted with elderly villagers, but no one could decipher the markings. They were unlike anything she had ever seen before. Just as despair began to creep in, Anya stumbled upon an old, forgotten text in the village library. It spoke of a forgotten deity worshipped in the region centuries ago, a protector of the land who was said to reside in deep wells and springs. The text also described a unique set of symbols used in ancient rituals to appease this deity. Her heart leaped. The symbols in the book bore a striking resemblance to those etched on the Whispering Well. Could the well have been a site of ancient worship? And if so, what connection did it have to the body found within? As Anya delved deeper into the ancient text, she discovered a chilling passage. It spoke of a ritualistic sacrifice performed during times of great hardship. A young woman offered to the deity to restore balance and prosperity to the land. The description of the sacrificial attire mentioned a crimson silk cloth. A cold dread washed over Anya. Was the young woman in the well a victim of an ancient ritual, a sacrifice forgotten by time? But that couldn't be right. These were modern times. Such practices were unthinkable, yet the evidence seemed to point in that direction. The isolated location of the well, the strange symbols, the crimson silk, it all painted a disturbing picture. One particularly sweltering afternoon, as Anya sat by the well, sketching the ancient symbols in her notebook, she noticed something she had missed before. Tucked into a crevice in the stone, almost hidden by overgrown moss, was a small, intricately carved wooden amulet. It was shaped like a coiled serpent, its eyes inlaid with tiny, glittering stones. Anya carefully retrieved the amulet. It felt strangely warm to the touch. As she examined it, a wave of dizziness washed over her, and the whispering started again, louder than ever before. This time, however, the whispers seemed clearer, more coherent. She could make out fragments of words, of pleas and sorrow, of a life tragically cut short. And then, amidst the mournful murmurs, she heard a name spoken with heart-wrenching clarity: Lolita. Tears welled up in Anya's eyes. Lolita. Was this the name of the young woman in the well? The amulet, the whispers, the ancient text. It was all starting to come together, forming a terrifying narrative. Anya rushed back to Inspector Sharma with her findings. She showed him the sketches of the symbols, the passage from the ancient text, and the wooden amulet. The inspector, initially skeptical, grew increasingly intrigued as Anya laid out her theory. Together, they revisited the well. Anya pointed out the crevice where she had found the amulet. As the police carefully examined the area, they discovered more artifacts hidden amongst the stones. Fragments of pottery, faded flower petals, and another, smaller amulet. Armed with this new evidence, Inspector Sharma reopened the investigation with renewed vigor. He delved into the local history, tracing the lineage of the ancient families mentioned in the old text. He interviewed the oldest residents of Amarpur again, this time focusing on the legends of the well and any stories of unusual disappearances in the past. Weeks turned into months. The investigation was slow and arduous, hampered by the lack of concrete evidence and the villagers' reluctance to speak openly about the well. But Anya remained a constant presence, her determination fueled by a growing sense of connection to Lolita. One evening, as Anya sat by the well, sketching the serpent amulet in her notebook, she felt a sudden chill in the air despite the warm night. The whispering started again, soft and mournful, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't menacing anymore, it was filled with a profound sadness. And then, as she looked down into the dark depths of the well, she saw something that made her gasp. A faint, ethereal glow emanated from the water, illuminating something that had been hidden in the murky depths. It was a small, intricately carved wooden box. With the help of the police, the box was carefully retrieved from the well. It was old and waterlogged, but remarkably intact. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded crimson silk, was a collection of letters, tied together with a delicate silver thread. The letters were written in Hindi, in a beautiful, flowing script. They told the story of a young woman named Lolita, who lived in Amarpur centuries ago. She wrote of her love for a young man from a neighboring village, a love that was forbidden by the elders. She spoke of a looming drought and the growing desperation of the villagers, who believed that the ancient deity of the well demanded a sacrifice to appease the heavens. The final letter, written in trembling hand, spoke of Lolita's heartbreaking decision to offer herself to save her village. She wrote of her love, her fear, and her hope that her sacrifice would bring rain and prosperity back to Amarpur. She enclosed a lock of her hair, wrapped in a piece of crimson silk, and the serpent amulet, a symbol of protection she had received from her lover. As Inspector Sharma read the letters aloud, a hush fell over the small group gathered around the well. The truth, buried for centuries, had finally come to light. Lolita was not a victim of a crime, she was a martyr, a young woman who had made the ultimate sacrifice for her community. A wave of emotion washed over Anya. Sadness for Lolita's tragic fate, but also a sense of peace that her story had finally been told. The whispering seemed to subside, replaced by a gentle breeze that rustled through the leaves, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible sigh. But the story doesn't end here. As the police prepared to close the case, a local geologist who had been called in to examine the well made a startling discovery. Beneath the well, connected by a series of underground tunnels, was a hidden spring, and the water from this spring, when tested, was found to have unique mineral properties known to have healing powers. The drought that had plagued Amarpur for generations had unknowingly been sitting beneath their feet, locked away by the very well they had come to fear. Lolita's sacrifice, though based on a tragic misunderstanding, had inadvertently led to the rediscovery of this life-giving spring. News of the healing waters spread like wildfire. People from far and wide flocked to Amarpur, seeking relief from their ailments. The village, once isolated and steeped in superstition, transformed into a place of hope and healing. The Whispering Well, once feared, became a symbol of sacrifice and unexpected salvation. And Anya? She stayed in Amarpur, documenting the village's transformation. She wrote articles and took photographs, sharing Lolita's story with the world, ensuring that her sacrifice was never forgotten. The viral sensation she had unknowingly stumbled upon was not just a tale of horror and mystery, but a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and the miraculous ways in which hope can emerge from the darkest of depths. The discovery of the healing spring beneath the Whispering Well brought an unprecedented wave of change to Amarpur. The once desolate village buzzed with activity. Makeshift clinics sprung up, and the villagers, initially wary of the newfound attention, found themselves at the center of a miraculous phenomenon. Anya, now deeply entrenched in the community, meticulously documented this transformation, her photographs capturing the hopeful faces of those seeking healing and the quiet pride of the villagers. However, amidst this burgeoning hope, a nagging unease settled within Anya. The whispers had returned, subtly at first, like the rustling of dry leaves in a gentle breeze. But they were different now, lacking the mournful quality she had perceived before. Instead, there was a faint undercurrent of urgency, or perhaps, she shuddered to think, a hint of impatience. One sweltering afternoon, while assisting a team of geologists mapping the underground spring system, Anya noticed an anomaly. Their instruments indicated a hollow space branching off from the main tunnel leading to the spring, a void that wasn't consistent with the natural rock formations. Intrigued, she brought it to the attention of Inspector Sharma, who, by now, had come to trust Anya's keen observations. Reluctantly, given the already resolved nature of the case, Inspector Sharma agreed to investigate. A small team, including Anya and the geologists, carefully navigated the narrow, damp tunnels. The air grew heavy and still as they ventured deeper, the only sound the echo of their footsteps and the rhythmic dripping of water. Finally, they reached the hollow space. It was a small, circular chamber carved out of the rock. The air inside was strangely warm and carried a faint, sweet scent, unlike the earthy smell of the tunnels. In the center of the chamber, bathed in the beam of their flashlights, was a stone pedestal, and upon it lay something that made Anya's breath catch in her throat. It was the wooden box containing Lalita's letters, the same box they had retrieved from the well. But now, it was open, and the letters were gone. In their place lay a single, intricately folded piece of parchment, sealed with a familiar serpent amulet, identical to the one Anya had found. A wave of dizziness washed over Anya, the same sensation she had experienced when she first held the amulet. The whispering intensified, filling the chamber with a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. This time, the words were clearer, though still laced with an archaic cadence. The offering was accepted, but the debt remains, the balance shifts, the awakening nears. A cold dread gripped Anya. This was not the sorrowful whisper of a departed soul finding peace. This was something else, something ancient and powerful, stirring from a long slumber. Inspector Sharma, visibly unnerved by the sudden change in atmosphere and the unsettling whispers that seemed to emanate from the very stone around them, cautiously approached the pedestal. He carefully picked up the parchment, his gloved hands trembling slightly. As he unfolded it, a series of the same strange symbols Anya had seen on the well were revealed, arranged in a circular pattern around a central image. The image was a stylized depiction of a coiled serpent, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intensity. None of them could decipher the script. The geologists, experts in ancient formations, had never encountered such symbols. Even the oldest villagers, when shown sketches, shook their heads in bewildered silence. Days turned into a frantic search for answers. Anya immersed herself once again in ancient texts, her initial focus on the benevolent deity now shifting towards darker, more primal entities associated with the earth and its hidden energies. She discovered fragmented tales of serpent cults and rituals involving not just sacrifice, but also a form of cyclical awakening, a release of power tied to specific celestial alignments and periods of great change. The monsoon's unusual intensity, the sudden appearance of the healing spring, Lalita's rediscovered sacrifice. Could these events be interconnected, part of a larger, more sinister cycle? Anya remembered the chilling phrase from the whisper, "The awakening nears." What was awakening? And what was the debt that remained? Driven by a growing sense of urgency, Anya revisited the ancient text she had found earlier. She reread the passages about the benevolent deity, searching for any subtle clues, any veiled warnings. And then she found it, a footnote, almost hidden in the margin, written in a different, older script. It spoke of a duality, a balance between the life-giving and the consuming forces of nature, both embodied by the serpent deity. The benevolent aspect brought healing and prosperity, but the other, awakened by imbalance or a specific catalyst, demanded a different kind of offering, a return to a primal order. The catalyst, the text hinted cryptically, could be a significant act of sacrifice coinciding with a period of heightened natural energy. Lalita's selfless act, performed near the ancient well during a time of intense monsoon, could have inadvertently triggered something far more profound and potentially dangerous. Anya's blood ran cold. The healing spring, the miracle that had transformed Amarpur, could be merely a prelude to something terrifying. The debt that remained could be a demand for a different kind of offering, not to appease, but to satiate a newly awakened darker aspect of the ancient power. The whispers grew more frequent, more insistent. Anya started experiencing vivid nightmares, filled with images of writhing serpents and shadowy figures lurking in the depths of the well. She felt a constant sense of being watched, a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, even in broad daylight. One evening, as she reviewed her photographs of the chamber, she noticed something she had missed before. Faint markings on the stone pedestal, almost invisible to the naked eye, seemed to align with certain constellations visible in the night sky during the time of the monsoon. Consulting with an amateur astronomer in a nearby town, Anya learned that a rare celestial alignment was due to occur in a few days, a convergence of planets that hadn't happened for centuries. The astronomer spoke of heightened electromagnetic energies and unusual atmospheric phenomena associated with such alignments. A terrifying realization dawned on Anya. The awakening, it wasn't just a metaphorical stirring. It was tied to this celestial event, and the debt that remained it wasn't a monetary or material obligation. It was a life. The whispers now filled her waking hours, no longer just audible but almost telepathic, a constant chilling murmur in the back of her mind. She could make out more distinct phrases now. The balance must be restored, a life for a life, the well demands. Panic began to grip Amarpur. The initial euphoria surrounding the healing spring was replaced by a growing unease. Whispers of the old legends resurfaced, darker and more ominous than before. People started avoiding the well after dusk, their faces etched with fear. Inspector Sharma, though still trying to maintain a semblance of order, was clearly disturbed by the escalating strangeness. The geologist's instruments were now registering unusual energy fluctuations around the well, and several villagers reported unsettling dreams and a feeling of oppressive dread. Anya knew she had to act fast. The celestial alignment was just days away. Whatever ancient power had been stirred, it was growing stronger, and its demands were becoming increasingly clear. She returned to the chamber beneath the well, this time alone. The air was thick with the sweet, cloying scent, and the whispers were almost deafening. She placed her hand on the stone pedestal, feeling a faint vibration beneath her fingertips. And then, she saw it. A new inscription had appeared on the pedestal, etched into the stone as if by an unseen hand. It was a single word, written in the same archaic script as before, but this time, Anya felt a chilling understanding resonate within her. The word was her name. Terror seized her. The debt wasn't just any life, it was hers. She had been the one to uncover Lolita's sacrifice, the one to inadvertently trigger the awakening. Now, the ancient power demanded a balance, a life in return for the life that had inadvertently led to its resurgence. As Anya stood frozen in terror, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a suffocating vortex. The serpent on the parchment seemed to writhe, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Suddenly, a section of the chamber wall began to glow with an eerie, phosphorescent light. The symbols etched on it pulsed with energy. A low, guttural chant echoed through the chamber, seemingly coming from the very depths of the earth. Anya knew this was it. The awakening was happening, and she was to be the offering. But just as despair threatened to consume her, she remembered something from the ancient text, a forgotten counter-ritual, a way to appease the darker aspect of the deity not through sacrifice, but through an act of profound selflessness, a willing surrender of something deeply cherished. Clutching the serpent amulet Lolita had worn, Anya closed her eyes and focused all her energy, all her fear, all her understanding of the interconnectedness of life and sacrifice into the small wooden charm. She whispered a silent plea, a heartfelt offering of her own insatiable curiosity, her relentless pursuit of the forgotten, the very qualities that had led her to this terrifying precipice. As she did so, a surge of energy coursed through her, and the amulet pulsed with a brilliant light. The chanting stopped abruptly. The trembling ceased, the whispers faded, replaced by an unexpected silence, a silence that felt expectant. When Anya opened her eyes, the glowing symbols on the wall had dimmed. The serpent on the parchment no longer seemed menacing. And etched beside her name on the pedestal was another symbol, one she recognized from the ancient text, a symbol of balance, of harmony restored. The celestial alignment reached its peak, bathing Amarpur in an ethereal glow. But nothing catastrophic happened. The healing spring continued to flow, its waters potent and pure. The fear in the village slowly began to recede, replaced by a cautious sense of awe. Days later, as Anya prepared to leave Amarpur, a sense of profound peace settled over her. the whispers were gone, replaced by a quiet hum that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath her feet. She had faced an ancient terror and, through an unexpected act of selfless surrender, had averted a potential tragedy. But as her car pulled away from the village, she glanced back at the Whispering Well one last time. A faint shimmer of light emanated from its depths, and for a fleeting moment she thought she saw a figure standing beside it. A young woman bathed in an ethereal glow, her hand outstretched in a gesture of silent gratitude. And then, it was gone.